Okay, thank you.
And now, Vasilios Mavroudis will be talking about on the privacy and security of the ultrasound ecosystem.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, today I'm presenting on the privacy and security of the ultrasound ecosystem. I'll start with a short story of a product and framework. Better now? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay, I'll just run it, I guess. I mean, can't go any closer. Okay, thanks. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so this is a story of a product first. In 2012, Silverpuss, a company, was founded in India, and they had this product on ultrasound tracking, which was basically an ultrasound tracking framework. 2014, they got some funding from venture capitals, and then following up from these, there were popular press articles discussing their technology and the merits of it and how cool it is. And then shortly after, like a year and a half, the security community took notice of it, and things were not that nice anymore. So this is the first email. At least this was the first trace of the security community realizing what happened that I was able to find. So this is on a W3C mailing list. And basically what they're saying is that, there is this tracking framework using ultrasounds. Yeah, it looks shady, and there are potentially transparency and privacy issues. But from the email, there were not technical details at the time. So following up from that, popular press articles basically picked up on it and came up with fancy headlines. And following up those articles, like about 4 months, 5 months after, the FTC takes action and sends this letter to everyone, all the developers on the Google App Store who are using that framework. Basically tells them, if permissions are not enough, if you are tracking your users, you should basically let them know what is it that you are tracking for and what you're doing. So you have to be explicit. So following up on this, Silverpuss withdraws from the US market and says, we're not cooperating with anyone in the US. This doesn't affect us. And everyone then was very happy. Press moved on. It wasn't hot anymore, I guess. People went quiet because, yeah, the evil company was not around anymore. And it was mainly treated as an isolated incident. So the problem with that was that very few things became known about the technology itself. And we had lots of questions. Some of them were like, OK, what are they using ultrasounds for? Because at the time, we just knew they were using ultrasounds, but we had no idea what these frameworks are doing with these kind of things. Also, we were not sure if that was the only product using ultrasounds in the market. It was likely that there were other products as well. And then, of course, it looked kind of, it was carrying the sense of security and privacy. So we wanted to see, to learn more about it. So this is who we are. I am Vasilios, worked with Christopher Krugel, Xuan Hao, Giovanni Vigna, Yannick Fratantoni, and Federico Maggi on it. I will start with cross-device tracking, which is related to the actual technology. So cross-device tracking is basically what marketers and advertisers are all about right now. Their main problem is that users now have lots of devices, and to them, you appear as a different person from each different device. So what they want to do is basically to link all those devices together so that they know that it's the same person, and then they can follow up on you with their ads and content everywhere. There are two main ways to do that, either deterministic or probabilistically. The deterministic is very simple. If you are Facebook or Google, people are heavily incentivized to log in from all their devices to your service. So then it's trivial for you to know it's the same person. But if you're not Google or Facebook, then it's a tough thing to do. So they came up with different ways to do it, and this is the probabilistic approach. So one of those approaches uses ultrasound beacons. So ultrasound beacons are not really, it's just a fancy name for a simple idea. So basically, there are like high-frequency audio tags and they lie at the core of all ultrasound-enabled products. They encode a small sequence of symbols, and the cool thing about them is that they are inaudible to humans, and they can be emitted and captured by all speakers and microphones in commercial devices. So no special equipment is needed. Here are some more technical details. What they do is they operate on the spectrum between 18 kilohertz and 20 kilohertz, and they divide the spectrum into smaller chunks, which allows them to then correspond each chunk to a character so that they can build up their unique audio tags. And that's basically it. Each company does it differently because there is no ultrasound standard at the time. And of course, there are lots of patents companies try to exclude competitors from doing similar things. There are smarter ways to encode. Companies start to move towards these ways, but this is like, if you're using audio tags simply, this is the main thing that they're doing. So then combining those two things, cross-device tracking and ultrasound beacons, you can do ultrasound cross-device tracking, which basically offers very high accuracy, even though users don't log into their devices because you're not Facebook. And then you can embed those beacons to content, either on TV, radio, or websites. And given a framework installed on user's smartphone, for instance, you can pick up those beacons, and then you can trace the content they're listening to and potentially the device is coming from. So this sounds like a strong assumption, but what we saw is basically you can do this through loyalty apps, like a supermarket app or a concert app, listening for ultrasounds, by the way, or through advertising SDKs that a completely unrelated application, the developer just adds this advertising SDK on his app just to earn a small revenue. And by the way, it also listens for ultrasounds in the background. So here's how it works. It's really not that complicated. The company who wants to get advertised goes to one of those providers, and the providers basically start a new campaign. They generate a few beacons associated with it, and then they start embedding those beacons to actual content. And when the user accesses this content from the speakers of his device, the ultrasound beacon gets emitted. So what happens next is that basically if he has a smartphone nearby, like up to 7 meters, it still works. The beacon is going to get picked up and then reported on the background to the servers of the company, which now knows that, that user wants this content. So then they can follow up with him, basically update his interests profile, and push relevant ads with the final goal to increase their conversion rate. So this is only one use case for ultrasounds that we've seen on the market now. There are many others, like audience analytics, synchronized content and proximity marketing, and device pairing, which was used also on Chromecast. So we have seen all those things, and then we started wondering if this is secure, and because it looks shady. You can do all those things, but is it really secure? So I will demonstrate one of the attacks we came up with. So we just need the user with a computer with speakers and the Tor browser, and a smartphone which listens for ultrasound, and a state-level adversary. I'm going to say a bit more about this later. So let's assume the following scenario. So there is a whistleblower who wants to leak a document and contacts actually a journalist that he is willing to share it with. And then the journalist is trying to de-anonymize him. And for that reason, he asks him to go to a Tor hidden service and upload the document there. The whistleblower does that, and let's see what happens. So the whistleblower opens the Tor browser, and he has his phone nearby. Now we put it really nearby so that it's on the frame, but it can be in a larger distance. For the demo, we made it super obvious that the phone is listening for ultrasounds. Otherwise, normally it happens in the background. You can't see anything. So now the phone starts listening, and the whistleblower opens up a benign-looking website. And then it's not so benign anymore. So it updates itself to include some data. Okay, so I'm not sure how obvious it is, but here's like the phone number, IP address. This is the location. This is our lab at UCL. MAC address, email, and the Gmail is basically the Android account I used for that particular experiment. So he has lots of information. Essentially, the whistleblower got de-anonymized. So here's how we did it. We started the campaign, and then we embedded the beacon in a Tor hidden service which we set up, and we asked the whistleblower to visit that Tor hidden service. And then once the hidden service was loaded, the laptop that we used basically emitted ultrasounds. These we couldn't hear at all. But the phone picked it up and reported back to the actual tracking provider, where the state-level adversary can subpoena and get the data from. So as I said previously, the state-level adversary is, we didn't have a state-level adversary handy. So what we did is basically we simulated one, essentially redirecting those data straight to the website it came from. And this is not a strong assumption to make, because we've seen in the past this actually happening with, for instance, the AT&T example. So what happened in this case, there was the AT&T set up a platform for governments to use, and they could just provide an administrative subpoena, which doesn't require a judge's order or anything, and then they were getting data super easily, as long as they paid the fee AT&T asked for. So okay, we solved these problems, and then we wanted to do a security evaluation of that thing to see what's wrong with it. First thing we noticed is that the threat model relies a lot on the fact that ultrasounds cannot go through walls, and they have a limited range. And that's okay as long as you cannot use websites to emit ultrasounds or replay them through different platforms. So then the threat model is not valid anymore. Another problem is that there's a huge lack of authentication and encryption capabilities. The problem is that because of the encoding they use, there is no space for crypto there. It happens in noisy environments. It has low bandwidth, so you cannot really add crypto unless you do it in a smarter way. So this leaves them prone to replay and injection attacks. The other problem is the violation of the principle of least privilege. So what happens is basically if you want to listen for ultrasounds from a smartphone, you need full access to the microphone. And this is very bad because, of course, you can eavesdrop on users if you're a malicious developer. Or alternatively, if you're not a malicious developer, you can be perceived by the users as one, because the users are always suspicious of these kind of things. And this combined with a lack of transparency, meaning that lots of apps didn't do a good job in informing the user what they were actually doing, or didn't tell them anything at all. So here is what happens when you do that. So in May 2016, an NBA sports team started using ultrasounds on their app, and then they got, there was a lawsuit and complaints from people. And then same thing in July from another company, and then a few months after, again, there is a lawsuit against them. So having seen all those things, we started wondering if we could somehow fix it. And our first response was that no, we can't. And we were not particularly excited to try to fix the ecosystem. But then we started thinking of solutions. So the first thing we did is basically an Android patch for the permission system. It's basically creates a separation of the permission to access the microphone for audible frequencies and to access the microphone for ultrasound frequencies. So at least we solved that way the problem of being able to eavesdrop when you listen for ultrasounds. And then we also developed a browser extension, which essentially filters out the range of frequencies that ultrasound beacons use and leaves all the other audio intact. And because this is on the inaudible spectrum, there is no impact on the user experience. And you can do this on HTML5. It's actually pretty neat. And then we started discussing about long-term solutions. So standardization seems like a nice thing to do here. If we can agree on an ultrasound beacon format and then clearly define what the security features needed, we can actually then proceed and have operating systems providing methods for ultrasound beacon discovery, emission generation, and everything, much like it happens with Bluetooth right now. So then you won't need access to the actual microphone, and this solves the problem of ultrasound privileged apps. You just need access to that API as it happens with Bluetooth. And then this solves, of course, the problem of being perceived as malicious or being malicious. Then there was another problem with microphone locking because, of course, if the framework is listening through the ultrasound, your camera cannot capture a video with audio at the same time. So the interesting thing is that since we published the paper, the Google Nearby started taking off. So they actually used that to implement more or less what we discussed previously, although there is no ultrasound beacon standard yet. Google Nearby is using also Bluetooth, but they also use ultrasounds, as seen here. So it's more or less that. And if you have, I think, Marshmallow 601, it should be on your settings, so you can check it out. I think it's off by default. And basically, that's it. We have some lessons that we learned through this process. Essentially, it's nice and good to inform the users. So be transparent. Ask them if they want, if you are about to take an action, you should ask them. And some apps do that. Most of them don't. And then it's nice to have an opt-out option or preferably an opt-in option somewhere in your app in a visible place so that the users can flip this on or off if they decide to. And then finally, the standards in this case are very useful for security and privacy. So that's about it. Thank you.